Sometime in 2017, King Von got into this prison fight. At the time, no one heard about that fight because in 2017, let's be honest, no one really knew who King Von was. But in July of 2023, more than 2 years after the rapper had tragically passed, an Instagram account by the name Chicago's Rarest released that video on his TL. Of course, the video went viral, and it's not because of just how legendary King Von had become in the years since his passing. It was really because of just how crazy the story behind the entire altercation was and how it happened. At the beginning of the video, you can see Von in handcuffs walk across the cell to another inmate. Moments later, this other inmate helps him slip out of those cuffs. And then, Von proceeds to cross to the other side of the room to violate his target. And that's the crazy thing about Von. The man did that, knowing well enough it would get him in serious trouble with the guards that were literally outside the room and were literally watching him on the CCTV cameras. Now, if you don't know the background to this fight or what caused it, I'm gonna give you that lowdown in a minute. But in the meantime, one question has stayed heavy on my mind since the video dropped in July of 23, and it is, why? Now, at first, I was ready to let it go, ready to call it off as someone just raising dust against Von's name for clout, but when another video dropped, I knew something was up. And this time, Von wasn't fighting or slipping out of cuffs. This time, he was actually trying to get into one, on a whole other energy.
Hey, got a problem with gay people. How you gonna be Christian?
So because of your sexual orientation, you're requesting protective custody, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, as you can expect, ever since this video's come out, haters been quick to crucify Von and stans have been quick to his defense, but none of that interests me. What I want to know is the mind behind the demon called Von. How could the same guy that fearlessly beat a gangbanger in jail fearfully claim to be gay to avoid his ops? The problematic beginnings of King Von. Right now, we got 2 videos on our hands that can help us understand the man. The first one portrays Von as a hardcore that ain't scared of delivering a violent message in 12's domain, and the other is polar opposites, a video that shows Von as a coward claiming to be gay to avoid conflict. Now, you probably already know this, but I'ma say it one time for the newbies. In the hood, that first clip elevates your rep in the streets. People fear crazy, and that clip was Von in complete crazy. But you see that second clip? In the same hood, that clip is the equivalent to death by 1,000 cuts. If you're lucky, they'd ostracize you, tag you gay for the rest of your life. Your rep would be dead in the street, but you'd still keep your neck in business. But if you run out of luck, your own homies might be the ones to mud you, send a bullet in through your skull. And that's why it's crazy that Von would even think to try this, especially with the fearsome reputation he had. There's more here than this is telling. And while many have come forward to say that Von was gaming the system, I want to see how. Heck, I want to show you how. And for that to happen, we got to dive into the background of what caused the altercation we saw in the first clip. The background to what led to the altercation you saw in the first video had to do with this dude.
Not right. Huh? JoJo and all that too. I never cared. Y'all coming. You don't mind? I'm fat grade. Y'all.
This homie right here is the inmate that Von laid out in the cell. Here's a better picture of him. His name is 051 Freaky. And the particular clip that I just showed you is a perfect example of why he deserved the beatdown he got. Taken in July 2023, 051 Freaky went live and dissed everyone from FBG Brick to Lil Jojo to STL Tuka. Some friendly fire too. Truth is 051 Freaky is a goofy. So it's not too surprising that it was this same goofy on display, this same stupid habit of dissing his ops publicly that got him that ass whooping from Von. 051 Freaky had tattooed on his body the words L.A. Capone. And if you have any idea who a Capone is, then you can understand why Von spazzed out.
Hey, you heard I said that new shit? I say, if he can't break bread, he fake. I had one more buck on my plate. It was me and bro, we was in the store and both of us got 50
cent cakes.
They say, damn, what you come up with, how the you come up with that type of
Put simply, Louisiana Capone is an O-Block martyr. He was one of the original OGs of the Chicago drill scene. His undeniable talent, early rise, and contagious charisma placed him on the fast track to becoming Chicago's very own superstar. And in case you don't know, I'm talking about as far back as 2011, 2012 when Lil Durk still looked like this. That's how far back it was. Now, another detail you must know is that L.A. Capone was also a member of the 600 Gang, a black disciple set that was allied with O-Block. In fact, he was real tight homies with Durk, and they even appeared on several tracks together. You seeing the connection now? But wait a minute, it doesn't end there. In August 2014, Louisiana, Capone was walking home from a studio session when 3 individuals jumped him and shot him in his thigh and lower leg. Capone was rushed to the hospital, but by the time he got there, it was too late. He'd lost too much blood and died that same night. Now, after some investigation, the police would unmask his killers. 3 individuals, Saki Hardy Johnson and Michael Mays, were the ones with the gun, and the third, Michael Buchanan, was the getaway driver. You want to know what all those 3 had in common? They were all from the 051 set, bitter rivals of 600 Gang, and by extension, sworn enemies of O-Block. If you recall, the homie that Von laid out in that first clip is an 051 member, and that's why his tattoo was interpreted for what it was at the time to Von: blatant disrespect. But if you aren't familiar with the gang culture in Chicago or any of the black hoods in the US, you might be wondering why the hell Von would carry out aggression on a beef that was at least 3 years stale at the time. And you might have a point, because all 3 killers got their fair share of justice handed down to their asses. They all snitched on themselves to avoid life sentence, and eventually, Saki Hardy Johnson got 60 years in prison, Mays got 55 years, and Buchanan got 45. Now this might feel like justice to you, but before we move on from this chapter, I got one question for you. Did you know L.A. Capone personally? I'm guessing for 99.9% of y'all, the answer is a big no. Good. So let me switch up your thought process for a minute and see how much you hold up. Let's imagine for a minute you lost a member of your family to gang violence. Scratch that. Let's make it more personal. Imagine your next door neighbor was your family's biggest op, and let's say at some point your neighbor's father killed your pops. Now let's imagine the police arrested the man and gave him a life sentence, but some 10 years down the line, the man's son started wearing a tattoo that directly disrespected your pops. How would that make you feel? I mean, you might do nothing to the guy, but I bet it would have kept you up at night, make you want to dish out your version of revenge. If you can imagine all that, if you can tap into that kind of thinking, then you understand how Von felt when he saw 015 Freaky sporting a tattoo that disrespected a 600 legend, even if it had been 3 years after his death. Now you gotta understand that I ain't taking sides here. I ain't siding with either Von nor his op, because truth is the feeling is mutual. The violence swings both ways. In fact, depending on who's telling the story, Louisiana. Capone's killing was retribution for the murder of a 14-year-old member of the 051 Young Money gang named Fats, or Fathead. Fats was killed the 22nd of June, 2012, while the homie was walking with his cousin to a corner store. A van drove past them, and moments later, a hooded gunman snuck up behind the 14-year-old and opened fire. Fats died on the spot. Now we are entering hearsay territory here because nothing has been confirmed, but word was that 600 was responsible for the killing, and that L.A. Capone was even in the van when the killing took place. Again, the true depth of L.A.'s involvement remains vague at best, but fact is, and this is another rule you must learn, whenever a gang wants revenge on another gang, they go for the brightest star. They go for the ones that show the most promise. Why? Well, because they know that's what's going to hurt the most. Again, it's like that personal example I was giving you a second ago. If you really was about that life and you wanted to revenge your pop's demise old school, instead of killing your neighbor's old grandma, you would go for their most successful son, the breadwinner, or anyone that you feel is the most important. You would not want them to recover, because that's exactly how L.A. Capone was to the 600 gang. Kind of like how Dirk, Chief Keef, and the crew put O-Block on the map. Members of the 600 gang were certain that L.A. Capone would do the exact same for them, because he would have, if he lived, was still alive to this day. With the talent he had and the connections he had in Chief Keef, Lil Wayne's daughter, T.I.'s stepdaughter, and Lil Durk himself, Louisiana Capone would have been a superstar. Unfortunately, they cut him short. And to prove just how effective taking him out was, the 600 set are currently non-existent. Most of them have taken refuge under the O-Block banner. They are an endangered species, even though L.A. Capone has become a legacy piece. So now you see why it's impossible to take sides in this. Because if you had switched their places, 015 Freaky would not hesitate. It's kind of like both dudes are caught in a matrix or something. Like that was their reality and they can't escape. Well, you are right. That was their reality. And sure enough, there was no escape. And more than anyone would care to admit, it had more to do with environment and upbringing than the individual themselves. Because you see, it's one thing to confront your ops on the street, and it's another thing to join a prison fight. But what we saw in that first clip was different. Von initiated the fight in a cell full of ops and under the watchful eyes of 12. That's not normal, but it was expected. And I'm about to tell you why. The hood raises its own. They called Von a demon.
I watched a demon get erased, walked to his demise with so much power and force behind him.
Von himself went as far as creating a track with that exact same title, because before they called him one, he called himself. But what does that word mean? And I'm not asking because I want to sound fancy or something. I'm asking because I feel it's one of the most misunderstood parts of who Von was and what he became. So when we say demon, are we talking about an actual demon, like some Satanist Doja Cat kind of shit? Or are we talking about the unending thirst for blood that made Trap Lord Ross do a 4-hour doc on how Von was actually a serial killer? Or is it deeper than that? Are we talking about something more complex, something that had to do with being a kid from O-Block, a kid that couldn't escape his own fate, a kid that was born into a home where he didn't know his daddy until much later?
How old were you when your parents separated?
My parents weren't never, they weren't together when I was born. My father was in jail. Then he passed away after not too long after he got out. So my parents weren't really never together.
Because that's who Von was. And the block he was born into was seared into his DNA. Because I don't know if you already know this, but the homie wasn't even trigger happy when he was a kid. He was actually a smart kid, had good grades, and had a sharp mind. In his own words, Von would say he had to be in a gang. It wasn't something he chose, it was something he had to do, because if he didn't, he would have had a lot of issues to deal with.
OTF, how did you become a part of that?
I grew into it, like part of the, like, hold on, IS2OTF, hold on. Like it's OTF, you know, the record label, and
okay.
It's OTF, like, you know, I've been OTF.
Why? Well, because gang membership in the hood has always meant protection from the threat that the gangs themselves create, because the gangs run the blocks and kids that are unfortunate enough to be born there have to represent. And because if you was a young kid that didn't rep nothing and no one, you automatically became free game. So when Von came of age, he had to join a gang. And when he did, it was the Black Disciples, the O-Block set on 64th Street, south side of Chicago. But I'm sure you're saying that none of these explains what demon means in Von's context, especially because there's tons of homies in the hood who are gang banging that still don't have the notoriety or fear that Von inspires even in death. And I know this caused anyone that would cause Charleston White to off like this.
Stomp on his head, King Von dead. Stomp on his head, King Von dead.
That gotta be feared. So what category of demon did Von fall in? Well, here's my theory. There's a legendary quote from The Killing Joke where the clown prince of crime told Batman that the world was one bad day from becoming like him. Joker was correct about that, all right, but what he failed to mention is that some people got tendencies. They got that dark streak in them that makes it more likely for them to become demons faster than others. It don't take much for folks that are like Von, but in the same breath, some of these homies never get that bad day because they got a stable home and all. But the moment that stability's gone, they snap and put on the cowl. You think I'm tripping? Go check the background of the most insane serial killers of our time. Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Sam Little. These killers and many others had rocky childhoods and up environments that validated the demon in them. It's not too different from peeps who can't taste alcohol without downing the bottle. I know homies like that. Myself, I'm different. I can keep my 10 toes down and never be overcome by the allure of the liquor. But that's life. You bet there are some things that'll take me out faster than others. And the same thing applies to the streets, to the killing. While some homies would stack 1 or 2 bodies and be content, shooters like Von devolve into pure mayhem and just unleash themselves on their victims. And most of this can be traced to the fact that Von had no family structure to keep him sane, to keep him rock steady, to distract him from his bloodlust.
I wish I never grew up in the projects. I wish I wish my mama had some money when I was a lot of if I could wish a lot of different, but it just happened like that. Like say your brother get killed or somebody get killed. It just happened like that. What you gonna do?
I mean, the homie didn't get to see his pops until he was 6. And when he did, it was the first and last time, because a few months after that, his old man got shot and killed. Now, when you layer that kind of trauma on the gang-banging environment he grew up in and his uber-violent tendencies, you get a villain origin story like none other. And that's why he couldn't even remember when he flipped the switch from the smart school kid to the terribly efficient street kid. The man could not even trace his crazy to the jump. He just felt that he had always been that way. It was kill or be killed. And Von was incredibly good at the former until he was not. But hey, we're getting ahead of ourselves. And I must remind you that I'm not taking Von's side here. No killing is acceptable. No one he killed rightfully deserved to die. And the bodies he allegedly stacked were unacceptable. But like I said from the jump, if we judge Von in that manner, we won't understand him or his psyche. And the point of it all will be lost on us. So let's dig a little deeper. When Von was alive and even after he died, there was a running joke that the rapper had been to jail at least 100 times. Now, I don't know how true this is, and I don't know if it is even possible, but take a look at all of these mugshots. The man's got enough mugshots to fill a lifetime of yearbooks. King Von's mugshots got them coming of age TikTok transition videos energy. Truth is, and this is for those who was familiar with King Von before the money and the fame, the rapper rapper had spent more time in jail than out of it. On November 21st of 2012, Von was arrested and booked in Cook County Jail for unlawful possession of a firearm. At this point, he was just beginning to fully embrace the streets. He had dropped out of high school and was beginning to put a lot of work into the Black Disciple. Yeah, because that's how it works. The same way you get to work and put in the time and effort to impress your boss is the same way these homies get to all of that illegal business when they join a gang. And as you already know, especially if you're familiar with how Von got his leap up into the music industry, the homie was insanely ambitious. And that ambition was part of what gave him the kind of fearsome rep that made him a solid BD member. He was never slacking, never caught lacking. And to maintain that kind of energy 24/7, you have the tendency to overcompensate. You have the tendency to become a demon, the demon called Von.
King Von got more bodies than a cemetery. I'm just playing.
One of the wildest Von Demon moments has got to be the one from 2014, July 24th. Von and his homie Big Mike were at a party when they crossed paths with an op called Malcolm Stuckey. Now there was no violence in the beginning, but after a minute, Stuckey reportedly started giving Von a look that he wasn't feeling. And so Von took it as disrespect, left the party with Big Mike, grabbed a pistol, returned to the party, and opened fire on both Stuckey and his homie. Stuckey died on the spot and his homie was severely injured. Now there's a reason why I say this was one of his wildest hits, because so far this sounds routine. So stay with me, because the next thing that happened was the police cornered both Big Mike and Von. Now this is where things went sideways, because while Von would say nothing to 12, Big Mike gave a statement relaying the whole event to the police. Practically he snitched, and his version of how the murder went down was completely different from what I just told you. It was way more wild, cause according to the man, he and Von actually chased both men down, with Von shooting Stuckey in the face and Big Mike shooting Stuckey's homie in the leg. They hunted them down like animals. So you're probably wondering why Von didn't end up in jail for this.
You get the feeling everything because they being dramatic in the courtroom too. Like everybody getting that. And they ain't saying nothing. Everybody got a straight face. So all right. So first degree murder. You know, now you waiting on what they finna say. They pause again. Not guilty, all right. First degree attempt murder, not guilty, all right. First degree attempt, not. Oh, damn, that's all of them. You see what I'm saying?
Not guilty on all counts. 3 years in the making. Von beat all charges. And the main reason was cause Big Mike had realized the error of his ways and chosen not to testify in court. But while this gesture was necessary to Von's release, it meant nothing to both the streets' cause of that initial statement. Big Mike had already broken the code. And to the police, it also meant nothing, because Big Mike ended up getting 28 years for aggravated battery with a firearm, while Von walked free. And you gotta see why Von was called a demon. He didn't slip up once, didn't make an error. The homie was disciplined and kept his head. Because you see, the streets don't forgive, they punish. And that's why despite the fact that Big Mike course corrected, he was still labeled a snitch. And beyond just messing up his relationship with Von and O'Block, it extended to ruin his younger brother's life. Another demon, a shooter named Wooski. Now, I don't know all the details. Wish I could tell you the exact details, but all I got is broad strokes. And the word on the street was that all that bad blood from his older brother, who was now in jail, caused Wooski to defect. The homie started hanging out with O-Block rivals in St. Lawrence, E-Block territory. I mean, these were GDs who were geographically positioned right next to O-Block, making them Von's biggest ops, and Wooski's move a colossal betrayal. Of course, soon enough, Wooski put in the work for his new family, and of course, he would allegedly shoot and kill a BD from O-Block when he was just 12. That was the tipping point. The homie was forced out of O-Block territory and soon began antagonizing his older brother's former friend. Von, I mean, it was out there in the public, out there for everyone who wanted to see. They was trashing it out on Twitter with threats like these. Everyone in the hood, on both sides of the block, knew it was just a matter of time. They could hear the bomb ticking, so who was gonna get the first hit? In October of 2018, Wooski found himself at the wrong end of a gun barrel. The homie was attending a funeral for his friend Dusky the Man when he decided to step outside to smoke a cigarette. The moment he stepped out of the church, he got shot in the head. I mean, he didn't die, but till this day, the man's still recovering. Von successfully neutralized an op without any trace. I mean, he could sing about his hits. Some even say he self-snitches, but how much of it can you prove? The police couldn't prove nothing, so good luck trying. But while we've been able to explore the demon Von was, there's still one piece left to this puzzle, and it's about the second clip. What was Von on about claiming gay and avoiding ops? It's been a lot of OGs that have come to Von's defense post-mortem when that clip dropped. Boozy famously went on Vlad to say he was doing it to avoid his ops, and his ex-Asian doll has also echoed the same sentiment. They're all saying that he did it to avoid conflict, to save his skin and keep his head. Okay, we get that. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's not all battles that you ought to fight, but still, doesn't that negate the whole demon energy we know him for? Doesn't that make him look sus, make him lose his rep? Well, here's what I gotta say on that. The reason Von survived for as long as he did was because he knew how to choose his battles. Von knew who he could hunt down and who he couldn't. In fact, he was ready to do anything to stay above ground, even if it meant that he had to do hard work like taking care of an old cellmate. That's how he got the name Grandson.
They had put you in the cell with 7. They put me in cell like that was that I gotta help him I gotta push him in a wheelchair. They put me in there with nah, for real, like I'm in a cell with a that's 80. I gotta take him to lunch. I'm in a joint. I don't even know this man, but he in my cell. I gotta take this man because you gonna leave this old man there.
The same name he tagged his third studio album. Say what you want about the man, but Von was disciplined. He might have been a cold-blooded killer, but he had his mind clear and eyes wide open. He might have been a demon, but it was deliberate, and he knew what he was doing. Crazy to say this, but he had control. And the moment he lost control, the moment he broke the rules of the street, the moment he chose to get into a fight he didn't need to, in an environment he had no control over, the streets did not forgive. They punished him immediately. Von wasn't gay. He was just doing what he had to thrive, and maybe that's what made him the worst of the lot. Maybe that's why it's difficult to argue against Charleston when he says he's glad Von's gone. Maybe that's why it's difficult to argue against Trap Lore Ross and the other YouTube journalists who call him a serial killer or soft-spoken assassin. Maybe. But then again, the homie's gone, and whatever threat he posed is gone with him. If you enjoyed this expose, click on a video on your screen to watch even more interesting lists like this one, and I'll see you there.